For more than 70 years, it's been the bedrock of global stability. But what if the Western alliance isn't just a little strained? What if it's actually breaking apart? Today, we're going to dig into a bombshell report from 2026, which argues that, yeah, the fracture is already here. And the cause? Well, it's coming from a place no one ever expected.
And that really gets to the heart of it, right? Is the Western alliance actually falling apart? We're going to walk through an analysis that argues the answer is a resounding yes. And it points to one very specific moment when this breakdown became impossible to ignore.
Okay, let's dive right in. The story, according to this analysis, really kicks off at the Munich Security Conference in February of 2026. Now, this wasn't just another stuffy meeting of world leaders. This was supposedly the moment where a new #1 threat to Europe was officially identified. And believe me, it was not the one anyone saw coming.
I mean, just think about this for a second. For over 70 years, the entire point of these conferences was basically to counter the Soviet and later the Russian threat. It was the whole game. But this 2026 report just flips that entire script on its head. All of a sudden, the primary challenge wasn't seen as coming from Moscow anymore, but from their oldest, most powerful ally, Washington, D.C.
Wow. I mean, this quote from the report itself, it doesn't pull any punches, does it? The language is so direct. It literally casts the U.S. president not as a partner, but as the main, most powerful force actively working against the world order.
So, the report points the finger. But what exactly is this axe that Washington is supposedly swinging around? Let's get into the specific actions and attitudes that, from this European perspective, are seen as a deliberate attempt to tear down the entire alliance.
Now, according to the report's authors, this isn't just random chaos. They see a very clear strategy here to fundamentally reshape America's role in the world, to centralize power at home, a move they actually call Putinizing America, and to act on a completely subjective, what's-in-it-for-me version of the national interest. And the report argues the result is a world that is way, way more dangerous for everyone.
Now, you'd think that this kind of pressure from Washington would force Europe to band together, right, to get its act together. Well, according to this source material, the exact opposite is happening. The shift in U.S. policy is just creating chaos, deep divisions, and a real sense of paralysis all across the continent.
There's just absolutely no agreement on what to do next. The source calls it utter discord, and you can see why. You've got some countries that want to stick with Washington. You've got others openly saying, hey, maybe we should work with Moscow. A third group is pushing for total independence. And then you have a whole bunch who are just stuck, totally undecided. It's a recipe for gridlock.
You know, a Washington Post analysis from around that time really hit the nail on the head. It painted this picture of a continent in crisis, just swinging back and forth between these two extremes, neither of which is solving the huge strategic problems they're facing.
And look, this pressure isn't just some abstract political problem for bureaucrats in Brussels. The report shows how it's all trickling down and causing these huge, severe political crises inside Europe's most important countries. Let's start across the channel in the UK. The source describes a political establishment that's in complete and utter turmoil, getting absolutely blindsided by a series of shocks that are shaking the government to its core. So what's causing all this chaos? Well, the analysis points to a few things. A major scandal hitting the prime minister, a very prominent billionaire making these explosive claims about immigration, and then that same billionaire meeting with populist leader Nigel Farage. It all paints this picture of a ruling class that is seriously losing its grip. And you know, if you think things are rocky in Britain, the situation on the continent is, well, arguably even worse. The report claims the very engine of the entire European project, that classic alliance between France and Germany, has basically seized up. It's completely broken down. I mean, just take a look at this. On just about every big issue you can think of, from trade deals to defense projects to the massive question of how to even deal with the United States, French President Macron and German Chancellor Merz are on completely opposite sides. According to the report, this isn't a simple disagreement. It's a fundamental split that's bringing all EU decision-making to a screeching halt.
Okay, so you've got Europe in total disarray. Its core leadership is at odds. Let's zoom back out and look at the whole transatlantic relationship again. Because all of these pressures are building, and it's all leading towards what looks like an irreparable breakup and the birth of some really dangerous new ideas.
And just to make things even more confusing, you've got these wildly different messages coming out of the United States. On one hand, you have the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, trying to be reassuring, talking about revitalizing friendships. But on the other hand,
you have a top Democrat, Governor Gavin Newsom, telling the Europeans to just ignore it all, that these policies are temporary. A comment that, by the way, reportedly infuriated the White House.
And then there's this. Just a gut punch of a quote from a former Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton. 4 simple words at that same Munich conference. It just perfectly captures this raw personal sense of betrayal that a huge part of the American and European establishment was feeling. So, okay, trust has totally collapsed. The old rules are gone. Where does this all go? The source material we're looking at points to one final, really alarming consequence, something that was once completely unthinkable.
Feeling like they've been left high and dry by the US, their traditional nuclear protector, some politicians in Europe are starting to talk about something that was, honestly, it was off the table for decades. For the first time, serious conversations are reportedly starting up in both Germany and Poland about maybe, just maybe, getting their own nuclear weapons.
And so, that leaves us with one last massive question. This analysis paints a picture of a world where that old post-war order is just crumbling before our eyes. As these historic alliances crack and break apart, the most important question for the future has to be who or what is going to rise up to shape the new one.